Thank you, Tom, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really honored to be able to say a few words here this afternoon, and I want to begin by just thanking Tom. He's been doing this for many, many years, and this is an amazing ceremony. Amazing, and the honor he's given veterans. He's obviously a veteran himself who served for many years. This is what Alaska veterans and our heritage are really all about, so I want to give him a round of applause. Our Colony High JRTC group does such a great job, and in particular a acknowledgement of our Gold Star families here, Brabander family in particular, but everybody. Again, the presentation today of remembering our own fallen with their bios, with their youth, with their heroism, so powerful. But for the Gold Star families, we just want you to know we're with you. And I'm sure every day is still a struggle. But your sacrifice certainly is not forgotten in this state, particularly this weekend, but in my view, it should be every day. So thank you. So I want to be able to say a few words as we're gathered here to celebrate Veterans Day. And I think that Veterans Day in Alaska is very special. My wife Julie and I, we just got back from DC this morning. Found 30 inches of snow on our driveway, so we've been digging out all morning. But we wouldn't miss this kind of ceremony for anything. Why is it so important to us in Alaska? You know, we're the state with more veterans per capita than any state in the country. Certainly a patriotic, special element of our culture and our heritage. And we love and honor our military families, military members. And one thing I always like to remind veterans, and it's so important because it makes it clear why we're such an exceptional nation. When you think about Alaska veterans, American veterans, the sacrifice of our Gold Star families, what they have done. And what they have done is really remarkable. And it's not just remarkable in terms of defending the liberty of our great nation and our security. But here's something else that's a message to all veterans today that I don't think it's stated enough, but it is a fact. And it's this. Whether you're a World War II veteran, a Korean War veteran, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, War on Terror, Cold War, any veteran, any American who is put on the uniform of our nation is part of an incredible heritage. And that heritage is this: not just protecting our security, but over the years, the U.S. military has done more to liberate men and women and children from around the world from tyranny and oppression, probably more than any other force in human history. Think about that. The Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, yes, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, hundreds of millions of people our military has liberated. You know, at the World War II Memorial in DC, the base of one of the flagpoles has a very simple statement: Americans came to liberate, not to conquer. When you look at the history of the 21st century, what big, powerful countries in the world could say that? Think about it. Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, the Soviet Union. Had those countries won, they certainly weren't going to be liberating anybody. They're going to be crushing and enslaving people. But we're different. We're exceptional. And every American veteran is part of that exceptional heritage. So if you served in any capacity, in any military branch, I'd like you to stand, and if you're a family member as well, stand and be recognized this afternoon, please. So I want to mention a couple other items here. You know, we all know that the world's a dangerous place right now. And fortunately, our state's going to play an important role in our national security. It increasingly is. But this also goes to the issue of our love for the military here. You know, the father of the U.S. Air Force, Billy Mitchell, said that Alaska was the most strategic place in the world. He said, quote, "I believe that in the future, whoever holds Alaska will hold the world. It is the most strategic place on the planet." The Department of Defense is finally waking up to this fact. Hopefully you've seen over the last several years, there's been a very big military buildup in Alaska. Billions of dollars in military construction, F-35s, new 11th Airborne icebreakers. I mean, we're getting a lot because we're so strategic. Of course, that's good for jobs and our economy, but it's really good for the national security of our country. But it's not just because we're strategic. It's also because the military is just like any other organization in the world. It wants to go where it's wanted. It wants to be in a place where it's respected. And this is another part of our magic here in Alaska. The military is building up here, yeah, because we're strategic, but because we want it here. You know, some of you might remember in 2015, beginning of 2015, the Obama administration announced they were cutting 50,000 active duty Army troops, including the 425 right down the road. 4th Brigade, 25th Infantry Division, the only airborne brigade combat unit in the entire Indo-Pacific. That was something I fought really hard because I thought it was strategically very misguided. 5,000 man and woman airborne brigade combat team right here. So we got together to fight it, and there was a colonel in the Army who was supposed to go to every one of these communities where they're going to lose these 50,000 soldiers. And it was his task to hear and listen from the communities. And I went to go see this colonel. And I said, "Colonel, you know you're going to go to probably 30, 40 different communities in America when you're looking at cutting these 50,000 troops. I don't think you should be cutting any of them, but especially the troops in my state. But I said, trust me, when you go to Alaska, you're going to see something very special. You're going to see something very different, like you won't see in any other community in America, about our love for the military and our veterans." And he looked at me kind of condescendingly, "Yeah, okay, sure, Senator." So I see this guy about 4 months later, comes in my office, and he was kind of just stunned. And he literally looked at me and said, "Senator, I have to be honest, when you gave me that little speech before I went on my mission, you know, I kind of thought, yeah, what does he know? He hasn't been in all these communities." And then he said, "And then I got to Alaska, and I've never seen anything like it." He said, communities came out, there was rallies, there was hundreds and hundreds of people in Anchorage, MatSu, Fairbanks, marching bands, cheerleaders, right? They all came out for the military. And he said, "I had never seen anything like that in my life." Well, of the 50,000 troops that the Obama administration wanted to cut in the U.S. Army, guess what? They cut 45,000. And guess what they kept? The 425 right here. Our troops. And that's because of us. That's because of Alaska. That's because of our love of our military. You know, there was another example of this. It was a couple of years ago. I kept reading in the news how Burlington, Vermont, the city council and the elected leaders kept writing the Pentagon how they really did not like their F-35s. They didn't want them. They're too loud. They kept flying over the city and making all this noise. So literally they're writing resolutions from the City Council of Burlington, Vermont. We don't like these F-35s here. So I was like, I called the Secretary of Defense. I said, Mr. Secretary, so you got a problem with Burlington, Vermont? I said, I know a state that'll take those F-35s. We'll take them. Because we all love our military. So I'll just mention one final thing. And I think on Veterans Day, it's important to think through how we've thought about the ebb and flow of our way in which we as a country have honored our veterans. You know, I was just in DC two weeks ago. We had one of our last frontier honor flights that came to Washington and brought World War II veterans from Alaska, Korean War veterans, Vietnam veterans from our great state. My team and I, we always meet our honor flights. By the way, that was the 10th anniversary of the last frontier honor flight. Amazing. It's so moving. My team and I, we always show up with donuts for them. What we call Marine Corps Pogie Bait. It's so special. So we just did that. And like I said, we had heroes from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and it does make you think about how we have honored our veterans as a nation. Of course, our World War II generation rightly is referred to as the greatest generation for saving the world from tyranny, let's face it. And it was America that played the key role. Over 400,000 Americans from this greatest generation gave their lives defending freedom and defeating tyranny. So that was this great celebration. Every veteran was revered. Then came the Korean War just 5 years later. And our great respect for veterans kind of started to decline a little bit. The Korean War is referred to as the Forgotten War, a phrase I really dislike because it's not very respectful. But there was kind of this benign neglect of Korean War veterans who sacrificed so much. And then, of course, came the Vietnam War. And we all know what happened, but to this day, we really don't know why it happened. But our country went off kilter. And the respect given to our service members and those killed in action and served in Vietnam, in my view, hit rock bottom, where many veterans were not revered at all, were disrespected, treated poorly, despite going overseas to defend our interests the way other Americans have over the generations. But something remarkable happened in our country. And to this day, I just am so grateful for our Vietnam vets. Instead of being racked by bitterness and anger over the way they were treated, our Vietnam veterans set out to make sure that future veterans of America's wars and their fallen comrades would receive better treatment than the Vietnam veterans, to bring us back up to that World War II level of respect for our veterans. And here's the great thing. The Vietnam vet generation succeeded in this. I've seen this in my own career. Many, many years ago, I presided over a funeral at Fort Rich of a Marine sergeant that was killed in a terrible accident here. And it was a pretty small service. And midway through the service, these Vietnam vets on motorcycles pull up. They stay there the whole time. And at the end of the service, they came up and they asked me, were you the senior officer? I was a captain in the Marine Corps at the time. I was. And I said, did you know my sergeant? Thanks for coming. Did you know him? Said, no, we didn't know him. We just saw that his funeral was today, and we want to make sure he got the respect and dignity that any veteran at a funeral deserved. Pretty amazing thing. Pretty amazing thing. So do we have any Vietnam veterans in the room today? We got Gene Horner here. Thank you for our Vietnam vets. So I'll end with this. You know, one thing I do in the Senate, which I enjoy doing a lot, I do this thing called the Alaskan of the Week, where I go down on the Senate floor, usually Thursday afternoon, and I just talk about someone from our great state who just deserves to be recognized in a speech on the floor. Sometimes it's someone who's world famous, you know, like our great Olympic breaststroke gold medal champion from a couple of years ago. Sometimes it's someone who was a librarian for 40 years at a library, doing great work. But I call this person our Alaskan of the Week, and oftentimes it's about veterans. It's about veterans, because we have so many great veterans. What I call it, the heroes among us in Alaska. 2 years ago, I did this Alaskan of the Week about a man named Jim Schmidt. I won't go through the whole thing, but the story is so unbelievable that if a Hollywood movie script was provided to somebody, they would have said, "This is, you can't even believe this." This is a young man, a hero among us, World War II, joined the airborne to fight the Nazis in Italy when he was in 8th grade. He was 14. He lied to the military, said he was 18. Heroic, wounded in action. His mom is very upset because her husband's fighting. She writes President Roosevelt saying, "Why is my son over there? He's only 14. President Roosevelt tries to bring him home. It's like Saving Private Ryan. By the way, Jim Schmidt got an invitation to his 8th grade graduation when he was in Italy fighting the Nazis, and he wrote back saying, "I can't come to 8th grade, I'm fighting the Nazis in Italy." So President Roosevelt says, "Go find this kid, bring him home." They bring him home. He doesn't stay home for long. He goes and joins the Navy when he was 16. And he's hunting subs in the Atlantic. And then he gets kicked out of the Navy because someone else realized he lied to the Navy. Then he goes and joins the Merchant Marines. Then after the war, he finally turned 18, enlisted in the Army, fought in Korea, fought in Vietnam, and was one of our Alaskans. He just passed away last year. Amazing, amazing service. So I made him an Alaskan of the Week a couple of years ago. Nobody could believe it when I gave the story of this guy. But last night on the Senate floor, I gave another speech about Alaskan of the Week. It was all about Gene Horner, who you just heard about. 4,900 times he's played taps for grieving families in our state. He did it in Vietnam. He did it in Alabama when he was stationed down there. The VA has estimated he's done over 10,000 hours of VA volunteer service for American veterans. So, Gene, I'm going to embarrass you one more time. Can you come out here and just one more round of applause for this great American? Great Alaskan. So with that, I want to thank everybody, Gene, Tom, the MatSu College. This is an amazing facility. And I just want to thank the Gold Star families again. And it's just very special to be in Alaska on Veterans Day. I don't think any other state reveres their veterans more than we do. And it's a great part of who we are. And it's great to see young Alaskans here too, because this is the legacy we need to pass on to the next generation. So I hope you have a meaningful Veterans Day weekend. Of the Marines in the audience, happy birthday to the Marines. It's our birthday as well today. And I'm very honored to be able to say, well, I guess more than a few words now, but have a great Veterans Day. Thank you.